Welcome into the Vestavia Hills City Schools podcast. I'm Whit McGee.
And I'm Brooke Wedgeworth.
It is March. Spring break is almost here. You can feel the pollen in the air. And what a lovely time it is in Vestavia Hills. Brooke, how have you been doing?
I've been great, Whit. Yes, I'm enjoying this warm weather. Of course, I'm waiting for the bottom to drop out, and then we wake up and it's 30 degrees.
Right.
So I'm sure that's coming. Probably spring break week as we're all out on the beach.
Right, exactly.
It's going to be freezing, 40 degrees.
I do hear a lot of people refer to this as fake spring.
Yes.
So we're maybe not quite there yet, but it is on the way. You were just mentioning to me that you've been looking at new science and math standards just today, in fact, right?
Well, we've been reviewing science and math standards with all of our elementary teachers, just really digging into those standards, continuing to revisit those and talk about how can we support our teachers and provide the resources and training they need, and continue to provide even better experiences for our students in those areas.
Well, that is so interesting that was going on today, because that is an area that our guest today can also speak pretty fluently about, and that's Dr. Blair Inabinet. She is the principal of Vestavia Hills Elementary Liberty Park, and somebody who has a lot of experience in STEM at elementary and secondary levels, but also has gotten to see the STEM lab that's been piloted at Liberty Park Elementary for the past, is it 2 school years now, Dr. Inabinet?
That's right. We started the STEM as a special last year, so we are nearing the end of our second year.
So tell us a little bit about how that STEM lab has been going now, like you said, almost 2 years, and even some of the experiences that you've noticed and seen really grow and change over those 2 years.
It has been really magical to watch that take shape and truly take shape. Literally, we started that space physically, the facility itself, the room itself was a blank slate that had been a variety of things over the years at V-Help. Most recently, it was a little bit of a storage room for old technology. And so when we found out that we were going to be able to use it for a STEM class, our STEM teacher, Martha Martin, she really took the reins in casting a vision for what that space would become. And it has been incredible to watch it literally build and grow and evolve. The room itself is not going to always look the same any 2 days in a row. It's very functional, movable furniture, equipment, manipulatives, resources that kind of flow in and flow out of the workspaces dependent on the challenge that's being issued that day. And so seeing the actual space evolve has been really, really cool. Watching our kids take ownership over that space and making sure that it meets the needs of whatever it is that they're working to accomplish that day has been really, really neat to watch. And then in terms of the actual content, that's been pretty consistent, but it is varied depending on which core value is being emphasized or what the challenge of the day is. And so watching the nature of the actual content evolve has also been super special. And then certainly the best part is watching our kids grow and seeing the differences in the habits of mind that they are developing and watching their critical thinking grow and develop in a relatively short amount of time. I mean, just over a year and a half is not a super long time, but the growth that has happened in the ways that they think critically about things and they tackle things collaboratively, it has been super special to watch as an educator and certainly as a former science teacher too.
So for our folks who may not be familiar with this, talk for just a second about what the STEM lab is and where the idea for this came from.
So our STEM lab, physically, it is a classroom. It's a space that is in the hub of an area where every single one of our children pass in transition every day. So physically, it's an actual classroom space. And then in the context of our school day, it is a special. It is a special class that all children, kindergarten through fifth grade, attend once a week. Our kindergarten and first graders, they spend 30 minutes a day in their specials, and our second, third, fourth, and fifth graders' specials times are 40 minutes long. So it is an actual class. It's a part of our specials rotation. And then physically, it's a space of great creativity and innovation that really targets an interdisciplinary approach to problem-based learning. Whit, I'll go a little bit further on that. And the concept behind it was really twofold. My background as a science and humanities teacher, I've taught both of those at different points in time, comes from a place of knowing that in the elementary grades, we are responsible for allocating the majority of our minutes to literacy and math instruction. And that is fundamentally very sound. That makes sense. It's very reasonable for us to do that. But we need to make sure that we are as explicit and intentional about targeting our science standards as well, and not just embedding them into our other content areas. That's important and that's effective, but how do we make sure that we're explicit and intentional about that? So that's one of the reasons that really drove this. And also it's what our kids are reaching for. It's what they find engaging and interesting in really natural ways. Our families also were very hopeful that this could be something we could pursue. So I was thankful when we were given the opportunity to pilot it in this way.
I understand that you've received recently some parent comments about how all of this has been going, maybe a survey that went out. I would love to hear just what you've heard from that.
Sure. So we had our SREB visit as a district, and then our individual schools received site visit teams back in the fall. And a component of that visit was a parent survey that was sent out to all of our parents. And one of the questions was related to an engaging learning experience that our children, or that their children, had really enjoyed, for the parent to be able to spend some time articulating on what that was. And a substantial number of our parent responses indicated that was related to STEM in some way, shape, or form, either specifically through the STEM as a special class or through a STEM team experience or a STEM club experience, all of those being offshoots of the STEM class itself. So seeing the ways that it has become a part of conversations at home, and the ways that our kids have really find these types of pieces really appealing to them, that was quantitatively supported in the survey results that came back in as well. So just another affirmation that this is good work. It's solid work. It's building critical thinking skills and all of that, but it's also supporting healthy conversations at home.
So Blair, talk a little bit about the contributions of your STEM lab teacher, Martha Martin. I know you mentioned her a minute ago, but really with starting something that's new and, really completely from the ground, how she's contributed to that and what some of her ideas for this STEM lab have been.
I can't say enough about her contributions. We could dedicate an entire podcast series to the work that she does. She's one of the most creative, innovative, hardworking, professional, collaborative educators that I've ever had the privilege to work with. And I truly believe that the success of this pilot has been because of her ingenuity and her expertise to make it possible. She really got the vision from the very beginning, owned the vision, helped establish the vision, and that's been fundamental to the success of STEM at VHelp. So a big component of her vision, our vision, is that it is in alignment with our school vision, which is that our work flows through the lens of our core values. A lot of times people will hear me say the decisions that we make, from how we spend our money to the people that we hire, that flows through that filter of, does this support our vision, our values, and our fundamental beliefs. And she really has looped that concept firmly into the belt of what STEM is meant to be. So our STEM class is a true vehicle for the work that we are doing with character. For example, the daily challenges that children work through in that class are really centered around a highlighted core value of either that day, that week, that month, maybe something unique that's happening in our building at the time. So she has organized her lessons and her challenges, as our kids know them, around core values that we're working and pursuing as a school community. So, for example, she understands that the crossover between character and content is where really meaning can happen for kids and things become truly authentic and relevant in a real world way. So a challenge, for example, if we are spotlighting empathy in any given month, then a challenge that she has used, as I said, for example, could be that we're designing an apparatus for a classmate who has a physical disability and they're working to navigate through the lunch line. So what is an apparatus that would help serve that purpose, but be done in an empathetic way? And so those are the types of challenges that are built that certainly can challenge a child and promote that higher level of thought, but also it's complemented by the work that we're doing with character as well.
Great that you mentioned the conversation about core values, because that was a big focus of our last podcast episode, Brooke, on appreciation of diversity and character education in the school. And what a focus that has been throughout the school system. And of course, at great schools like Liberty Park Elementary, it's great to see that is just something that enhances and adds value to what's going on. I'm interested, too, you've mentioned the SREB, which is Southern Regional Education Board, Southern Region Education Board, or Southern Regional Education Board.
Regional, I believe.
Southern Regional Education
We
Board.
like our acronyms, yes.
And they came in, Brooke, I know you were a big part of this work, at taking a look at STEM education, science, technology, engineering, and math, throughout the school system. And so this question, I think, probably for both of you, what were some of the big findings that they had? And then what are some things that are happening in the school system to help build on those things that they identified?
Well, I would say a lot of work. So one thing, in fact, we even had a pretty large group who met just yesterday to really dig into the data and the review materials that we received back from them to say, okay, what does this mean for our district? What does this mean for our schools and our classrooms? And if we put some of these things into place, what does that then look like, in our classrooms? And what are our next action steps? So each school and our district team really worked to start thinking about what are our action steps, what are our next steps, and then who are those people that we really need to get in place to support and see those actions happen. And so some of the things that we received from the review team, a lot of it, of course, was very complimentary to the things going on in our schools and our classrooms, one of those being our core values and our character education piece. But one thing they highlighted, and we really did a lot of work around yesterday, is how are we defining STEM in our school district? And what is that vision for our school district? So it's not just about necessarily a STEM class, although that is something that is wonderful and we would love to see in all of our elementary schools, but it's really about this approach to learning that should happen in all of our classrooms. So it's about those skills, those habits of mind that Blair mentioned earlier. It's about, critical thinking and collaboration and curiosity and creating and redesigning. And so it's really those skills that we want kids using in our, English language arts classroom, in our fine arts classrooms, world languages, science, social studies. So I think that's important to note that it's not just about science, technology, engineering, and math, but it's really how all of that works and those skills that go along with that. So that's one thing that really stuck out to me and that we are working and continuing to work to address.
I totally agree, Brooke. There's a lot of work that's being done to try to kind of encapsulate what is that vision for what this looks like. And that's been one thing that we've been very specific about as we are wrapping up our second year in STEM. When you hear STEM, it may be natural for people to think things plugged, the plugged version of things, technology, coding, computers, all of those types of things. And while that's relevant and has a place, our STEM lab is relatively unplugged. You may go in the STEM lab on some days and we're doing hour of code and there's a designated time and space for that. But if there's one thing our kids don't have shortage in experiences of, it's related to plugged in technology. So we really see the value in unplugging in those moments and focusing on design thinking and that critical thinking that we've said several times, and working with other people face to face. And so we've been very specific about this is a place and a space very much by design where we're not relying on the wired world, and we're building, we're creating, we're exploring, we're testing, and we are failing. That's the other big part of the STEM work, is that we are embracing mistakes and we're embracing these moments when things don't go as planned. And so really an unplugged, pre-designed space where kids can struggle productively and learn how to fail forward has really been the goal of our work. And to speak to what you just said, Brooke, that's because this is bigger than just STEM. There are those thoughts and the patterns that we begin to process the world around us, and that's relevant in any discipline.
So have you all talked about future plans for this class at Liberty Park? So maybe where do you hope to see this go even next year? What would you change, or, what plans do you have for the future and future direction of this?
That's a great question. And our kids are taking us there because one example I've shared, I think, with both of you before, I popped in the classroom not too long ago. It was a second grade classroom. So these are kids that had STEM last year and they've had it again this year. And they were building a structure designed to support the greatest weight at the tallest height possible. And this time, or that time a year ago, if they were navigating that same challenge, there's no telling the types of structures we would have seen being built and then collapsing all over the place. But our kids already have developed a skill set to understand what geometric shapes are the strongest. They understand the value in building the top of the structure as a prototype first. They know how to work collaboratively and effectively with their peers. So their foundation is already at such a place where our challenges are having to rise to the occasion to meet their growing skill sets. So our plan for the future is, really no limits, continuing what they are developing as thinkers and letting them take greater ownership over the challenges that we develop, over the investigations that they design. How are they reporting this out and truly becoming the experts in what they're working on, and continuing to lead us in the next steps for the program. I also see even further connection between our STEM as a special and our specific content classroom area teachers, that as we learn more about how our kids are growing in each individual environment, what are the best of all of those worlds that we can make more consistent among us. So those are really our next steps, is to let our kids kind of continue to let us, or inform the ways that it all takes shape for us, and then our teacher teams to continue to collaborate to take the best of what's happening everywhere and put it all under the framework of our overall instructional framework.
Well, and that's ultimately the goal, is that what's happening in a STEM classroom or a STEM lab, that carries over to all of the classrooms, to the whole school. And then how does that carry over to outside of the school, outside of the classroom, through the rest of their education, and then really ultimately into careers and society. So it starts, I guess, so small, but then, what the benefits and the expansion of this is what really is the ultimate goal.
So, Dr. Inabinet, you've been a bit of an ambassador for the One Rebel, One Future plan, specifically as it relates to STEM education and the possibility of, if this plan is approved, adding elementary STEM learning, like what you're doing at Liberty Park, to the entire school system, to all of our elementary schools. You've been an educator in Alabama and in Georgia. You've seen a lot of how this is done in different grade levels. in your view, if this plan is approved, what do you think would be the ultimate effects of having that elementary STEM programming throughout our school system?
I really think there's just no telling. And I know that that's not a measurable answer, but I believe very much in what Dr. Freeman has mentioned is what are our children telling us. And when we look at percentages, it's very easy to look at the complete percentage of this number or this percentage of children are proficient and this percentage of children select this as a major and this percentage of children score this qualifying score on an AP exam. And that is amazing and to be celebrated. But it is so important that we look at the remaining percentage. Why not? Why not? Or how can we? And this is how. This is how. I truly believe that the untapped potential rests in this field, in this work. You know, and I speak to it as a parent myself and as a former student very recently, that when your first experience in failure and in struggle and in challenge is when you don't have a very built-in safety net of support, then you don't know how to navigate that successfully. And you may completely bow out of whatever it is that's presenting that obstacle. We must expose our kids in intentional and explicit ways to things that they have to wrestle with. And oftentimes those are challenges and tasks that demand critical thinking, collaboration with others, and a more likely than not chance that you're not going to get it right the first time. And those types of experiences are the very nature of this type of approach and this type of opportunity. So when I think about what could change if it was present, I think about the percentages that aren't a part of the current percentages we have, if that makes sense. How do we get to every single child? This is that way. How do we take our highest achieving children, and we've got a lot of them, and level up? How do we engage our families in meaningful conversations about school? Will we give them meaningful learning experiences in addition to what they already have? Things that they really are continuing to chew on in their brain when they get home. So I think what this could mean in very concrete ways for us is that we would see exponential growth in interest in science and technology and math and design programs in general, beginning as early as middle school and certainly into high school. I think that quantitatively we would see our math scores increase even higher, our science scores increase even higher, and then other scores that are affected by those, AP, ACT, all of those, we will see the effects. But like we heard yesterday, Brooke, you remember, we don't close an achievement gap by focusing on the achievement gap. We close a gap, or we lessen a percentage, or we increase a percentage, whichever way you want to look at it, by the experiences, the expectations, and the opportunities that we provide. This is an example of those opportunities. And I'm very, very, very hopeful that it will be an experience that all of our K-5 kids will have, and in an increasing way our 6-12 kids will have very soon.
Well, and to build on a point that you were just making, Dr. Inabinet, about percentages, and Brooke, I know you see this data too. We have the second highest test scores in Alabama, which we don't want to dismiss that. I mean, that's incredible.
Right.
But we know from analyzing that data that if we ever want to move up to number one or be in a position to take over number one, it's in those science and math fields where the opportunity lies, right?
Absolutely. And again, just really providing experiences for all of our kids having challenging, engaging, rewarding, stimulating instructional experiences, to me is key, and something that will carry over well beyond even high school, beyond college. And for many of them may be a point in determining, what they want to do after high school, or maybe what they want to major in college, or, the career they choose. So I think that's another key piece, is really helping students to find their passion and an area that they want to continue to explore.
Yep, no doubt about it. Well, Dr. Blair Inabinet, thank you so much for joining us on the podcast today. best wishes for everything going out at Liberty Park. Hope you just have continued success.
Thanks, Whit. Thanks, Brooke.
And thank you for listening to the podcast. We'll talk to you again soon.